2414 is a podcast about finding hope and common ground through casual conversation. Like the friends on the road in the New Testament, in Luke chapter 24, verse 14, we want to walk away with more understanding that leads to more conversation as the journey continues. Thanks for walking with us.
Hey, welcome to 2414. I'm Dan, sitting across the table with Dave. Hey, Dave.
Hey, how are you?
Oh, man.
that's an understatement of the week.
That's a loaded question. It's kind of nice to see your face, Dave. If you listened to our last episode, my friend Dave Reddel from Omaha, Nebraska, flew out here, and we took on the Timberline Trail, 42-mile journey around Mount Hood. Last time we kind of talked about just life and running and getting ready for the trail and what we were expecting. And we completed that journey yesterday, started about 5 a.m., finished at 8:30. And so I say it's nice to see your face because for 15 and a half hours yesterday, for half of those I saw, well, a third of those, maybe I saw your calves and feet in front of me. For a third of it, you were too far in front of me for me to see you. And then a third of it, you were behind me, breathing on my heels, making me feel like I should go faster. So to see you face to face is kind of a nice little change. We'll, as always, we'll kick off with highs and lows. And, gosh, I didn't come prepared with a question of the day. I guess, the question of the day is favorite fast food place when you're on a road trip. So low and high, and if you're traveling, what do you look for? As like, I'm hungry, I hope this next rest stop or this next city has this. So for me, low, I think my back hurts. I'm a little bit sore, but a few blisters here and there. But I think my high is kind of comparably, like similarly, nothing's bad. Nothing is terrible. I can walk on my own free will. A lot of highs and celebrations from our run yesterday, but I mean, it was safe, it was fun, and that I think is worth kind of celebrating.
If you're walking upright after an ultra, that's a huge win.
Yeah. So nothing is drastically painful. What do I look for on the road? My kids look for Taco Bell. I tend to be pretty. I like Jimmy John's. It feels healthy, but I'm pretty happy with anything. Burger King, McDonald's. We had Burgerville today. That was a nice little treat.
That's good.
So probably a burger, maybe Jimmy John's. That's my standard. What about you, Dave? Lows, highs? What do you look for food on the road?
I'm gonna transition right into the food.
Okay.
And without a doubt, because I'm from the Midwest and we do not have these, but when I go somewhere and they have them, it's In-N-Out Burger.
Oh yeah.
And it's so completely opposite of healthy that you're asking for.
I'm not asking for healthy, whatever you want.
And I don't know if this is still a thing, but we do it anyway because we're from Omaha and we've been told this. Make mine animal style.
Animal style. That's
it is.
That's a thing. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Now, we don't have those in Washington. There's a couple in Oregon, a few in Oregon, and once you get down to California, Arizona.
Because there's times when we walked in and like, yeah, okay, kids, you need to say, make mine animal style. And they're like, is that a real thing? I said, I don't know, but I've been told that. We're going to look like complete fools we walk up there.
That would be great to have your kids say something to some stranger, like, just to make up a phrase and have them say it.
Pirate that, please.
You got to do the voice. They're not going to do it if you don't give them the voice.
Yeah.
So, all right, what about lows and highs?
Highs, probably two highs. One, just humbled and thankful that my wife allowed me to come out here to do this.
Thanks, Julia.
Huge. And she does this for some of these adventures that I do, which is really awesome because I think she sees the value of what I get out of this, not from a performance standpoint, but just from a relationship standpoint.
Yeah.
Lows, there was probably about 10 minutes on the last climb, the second to the last climb. That was about a 4-mile slog. There's a 10-minute period where I was, and you tend to get this at least once in an ultra, where you just doubt yourself and you get into a low and you start questioning things. But you've got to, through experience, you just got to realize that you're not bringing yourself back. I'm relying upon, and I'm having a conversation with God of, I know you're there. I'm going to trust in you. This hurts. It's not going to get any worse than this. And I'm giving it all to you. So let's see what happens. Because I know at the end of that 10-minute period, it's going to turn better. It's going to be.
Yeah. Maybe not at 10 minutes. It might be significantly longer than 10 minutes. It's a very generous low.
Yeah. So that was a very short low.
Yeah.
They've tended to be longer than that.
Yeah. Well, maybe we could give our viewers and listeners kind of a summary of the day, narration. So we drove down from Seattle Tacoma to Mount Hood on Friday, Airbnb, had dinner at a burrito wrap place. Raptitude, something like that.
Yeah.
And then we went to bed early.
Oh, and just for Omaha people's experience, the drive down from the Seattle area to Portland, where we stayed, was about 3.5 hours.
Yeah.
So it's like driving from Omaha to Iowa City, just to give them perspective. It was not close.
So yeah, this wasn't just a head on over. This was a road trip, like a mini road trip. Yeah. So we had our Raptitude burgers and wraps, and then we were in bed. Well, so we got back from the hotel or from dinner. We're at Airbnb, and it's kind of ground zero for the run. So we've got a big kitchen table and a coffee table, and we're laying out and a bunch of floor space. So we're laying out shoes and food and drink and maps and water filters and all the things that were on my checklist. I'm like, okay, don't forget this stuff. And now it's like, how do I get all this in my pack? What do I not? I brought it all the way down to Oregon. I'm not bringing this with me on the trail. That's heavy. That's space. There's no way I'm using that. I'm not going to need that. And Charles was like, do you need this? No. Well, why'd you bring it? Well, I probably should have brought it, and maybe I should carry it, but I'm not going to.
There's like a balance between excitement and reality. Excitement of thinking through all of that and like, I need to have that or put that. And the reality is, it's 42 miles. I really don't need to have that much stuff in my pack. And we can talk about it later, but at the end of the day, we actually had a lot of stuff that we didn't end up using.
Yeah, which is my experience. It seems to be somewhat consistent.
Yeah.
So we've got my wife, Charlotte, who's our crew of one. We were each other's pacers. We talked about crew and pacers a little bit last time. So Charlotte's going to drop us off, and then we're going to run 13 miles, and she's going to meet us there. So we're going over maps and time estimates, and we get all of our gear laid out. What do we want to be refilled with at the first stop? And what do we want to be refilled with at the second stop? And then we go to bed. It's like 7:30, 8 o'clock. And waking up at, I was going to say 4:30, but no, we got up at 3:30 in the Saturday morning.
And that was huge to have the Charlotte, because those stops in a mountain, or it's not a race, but it's experience, but in a mountain trail run that far with that kind of elevation, to be totally self-supported is a huge, huge deal. So to actually have her on course at a couple of points was a big, big deal.
Yeah, and people do it solo, unsupported. I don't think I could have or would want to.
Yeah.
It would have been a different kind of day.
Yep.
So we go to bed at 7:30, 8:30, somewhere in there. Wake up at 3:30. We're out the door 4:15. And we get to the Timberline Lodge, which is where it starts, about 5 a.m. It's dark. It's cold. It's windy.
Yeah, it's actually fairly windy.
Yeah.
And a little bit ominous.
I thought about grabbing my beanie. I was like, I don't know if I have enough layers for this. Yeah. We fill out a little piece of paper that says we're going out on the trail because the Forest Service wants you to. They don't care if you come back. They just want to know how many people go out on the trail. I think it's for so they can get revenue and funding for the thing. I don't know. So we head off at about 5:10 is when my official GPS said go time. We've got headlights. What was the first little bit of the trail like, Dave?
So the first bit, it was downhill, somewhat of an advantage, but it was through sand. It was through sediment that had been grounded down by the rivers that come down, and for years and years of history that made it interesting. And I think early on it was, we're having fun. Hey, this is great. It's a little bit of sand. We can deal with this. But it was about 1.5 miles of sand downhill. And it was 1,000-foot downhill, I think, for the first 4 miles. So got your legs loose. But it also kind of was the first attack on the quads.
But quads are like your thigh muscles for the non kind of technical people, right? The big muscles kind of from your hip to your knee, the big thigh muscles.
And then we got into some beautiful trail. It would have been transitioning into the forest, and then I believe we were running through some of the ski resort area, some of the lift area, and ran into a couple of women that were actually doing this with us. Not with us, but they started probably ahead of us. I'm not sure how
About an hour. I think they said 4 maybe.
And so we had a little conversation with them, and Ironman runners, finishers, and so they were pretty equipped athletes. But we pulled ahead of them a little bit and just kept on going, and we never saw them again. But we're hoping they finished.
Yeah, I hope so. So we're out there. It's dark. The sun's starting to come up. We see wildflowers are running in sand. And it's not like when the tide goes out and it's like dense packed sand. It's like sand dune sand, just fluffy. You're sliding in the sand. We cross a river, and we're kind of running through rocks, trying to find the trail again. And we don't see it, but we're just kind of, it seems like, there's a lot of, it seems like it should be this way. You kind of intuit where the trail ought to be. And we see this little orange tent. I think, man, this guy he just put his tent right on the trail. Good for him. And we go by his tent, 75 meters, and we're like, I don't see the trail. And at this point, the guy comes out. He's like, you guys looking for the trail? Like, I heard you go by, and I'm thinking they don't know where the trail is because we overshot it.
Yeah, and it was one of those things that are with other things that morning as well. We started counting the number of trees that were blown down across the trail. We thought, okay, 1, 2. Halfway through the run, we gave up on that because there's so many trees that were down on the trail. But it was those kind of obstacles, and then the river obstacles. We'll probably talk more a little bit depth about that. But that was actually fun, but challenging initially to understand. What's your strategy of getting across this river, and what does that look like? Yeah,
well, let's talk about the rivers. What was that like? Was it what you expected? Was it different than you expected? How would you describe it to somebody who's never been to the Timberland Trail or Mount Hood? When you do that, you're going to cross some rivers.
Yeah, it was a little bit different than I thought. I watched some videos ahead of time, but if you've never been there and you come across this river, it's late summer. It's not raging, but it's also not quiet. It's not a stream that it's just slowly moving along at home. This thing's moving, and it could be anywhere between 10 feet to maybe 20 feet across. Yeah. And there is no bridge, and you've got to really immediately understand, wow, this water's moving fast, number one, and number two, what's my route? And 3, do I want to keep my shoes dry, or do I want to go for it? And what's the complications and consequences of doing that? So the first couple of water crossings were interesting because I was trying to, from what I've seen in the video, trying to pick a strategy, find some rocks to hop over, and I did that for the first one, but the second, might have been the second or third one, it was much more powerful water flowing, and the course was not clearly marked. I mean, you had to make a decision, and at that point, I decided, you know what, these old legs aren't going to be able to hop to that rock without me probably slipping and falling and floating down the creek. So I didn't want any part of that. So I just decided to make a way across the creek into the water all the way through. And
so you're fording, you're kind of like poking out with your poles. Yeah. We both have like hiking poles, look like ski poles, and you kind of do a little gauge and depth of our sounding in here. How far is this? And there's spots where it's ankle deep, and there's spots where it might be waist deep.
Right.
And as you're tapping the ground, you don't necessarily see what you're tapping. For the most part, you don't. And so it might just be you tapped the one rock that was really tall, and you go 3 inches over, and it's a foot deeper. You don't know. And so it could be waist deep, could be ankle deep. There's waterfalls. So if you trip or fall, even though the water is not going to hurt you, there's current is certainly strong enough that you'll tumble a few feet. Right. And then that could be devastating if you go tumbling over a waterfall. And talking about rocks, you see a rock and like, all right, first one question is, can I make it there? Which is an important question. Another question is, what does that surface look like? Is that going to be slippery? If I could jump on that, am I just going to go sliding off? Right. Or even if it looks stable, is there enough of a surface area? Because some of these, if you're listening, you could picture like you're a chair that you're sitting on, maybe 18 inches by 18 inches. That it's a good surface. But other times it might be like an upside down milk jug. Like that's the maybe 9 inches by 9 inches, that's what you're aiming at a pretty like full speed jump in wet conditions.
Yeah.
And like, that's your second spot. And am I going to stop there, or do I need to keep going with momentum to get across?
Yeah. And I've learned from experience that just from hiking in Colorado and ultras is that my shoes drain well. So if at some point where I'm not just comfortable, I'm just going to continue to go through the water and kind of know by experience what I'm tapping ahead of me is going to be good, because that water it's glacial cold water. It's snow runoff water. It's not warm, and it's moving fast. And so you've got to really be in the moment to know exactly what you're doing. I mean, there's you
can't linger.
No daydreaming, no lingering, no daydreaming. You got to get across.
You'll lose sense very quickly.
And the river's running downhill, so this isn't flat. I mean, there's an elevation drop that we're actually negotiating with as well.
Yeah. So there were, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 that we had to give it some good thinking. 1 or 2 of those were like, we need to like just stop. Like probably, yeah. I'd say probably 2 to 3 times it was, we're not going to rush through this. We're not just going to go splashing through it. Kind of full stop, look upstream for a minute, look downstream for a minute. I see that. What do you see?
Yeah.
Do we have any evidence of other people? Are there anybody else right now who's crossing we can learn from?
Yeah. And that's a great life example. I mean, there's some streams that we can cross immediately because we have experience. We know what that looks like. But then where there's a challenge ahead of us like that looks different or feels different, stop, analyze, mentor, negotiate, talk, pray, and look around and try to figure out, okay, what really is the best strategy to get across this particular river?
How many times do you think we asked for help or we're part of a conversation, whether giving and receiving of kind of advice, counsel, direction?
The whole day, dozens of times.
Yeah.
For a variety of reasons. Could be, hey, we missed which it was easy to do. We missed the trail through this thicket of willows down to the river, and we might get good advice or we might get really bad advice.
Yeah.
But we were asking for that, and people were willing to give that. But then there might be other scenarios where we're giving advice of, hey, did you see my friends back in the trail? No, but if they started at a certain point from the lodge, we think they're probably about here. And so, there's all those touch points throughout the day.
And they're all strangers. Yeah. That's one of my kind of takeaways from this experience of we didn't know anyone on the trail, and yet there were countless times, I guess we could count if we wanted, but there were a bunch of times where we needed help.
Right.
And it wasn't like, hi, I'm Dan, I'm Dave, how's your morning? It was just like, hey, do you guys know how to do this? And just kind of get right to what we need. Yeah. And then so one guy gave us help. He's like, no, you got to follow the green flags. Okay, great. We go look, and 6 minutes later, I'm sorry, could you say that again? Like, I know you're in your breakfast. It's like 6:30 in the morning.
Saw no green flags.
We don't know where we're going. Could you clarify? Then I was like, all right, well, thank you, and I hope I never see you again. But I think at one time crossing a river, there's the rivers, they're often as Dave described, maybe 12, 20 feet across, but there's a bank on either side that some were easier to navigate out, some were more difficult. But the bank, it might be 12 to 60 feet up various slopes from, 85 degrees to maybe 40 on a nice one. But there was one early in the morning where there was a guy at the top of the slope. We crossed the river just fine. And he was great because he's pointing. We didn't know how to get up, and he was pointing and kind of telling us to go around this bend. And we went around the bend, and I was like, hey, thanks. And he's like, well, I was watching you because I was camping here last night and I couldn't see that bridge. So I saw you guys crossing, and I was wondering how you were going to do it. And it was just this very mutual, bear one another's burdens, and we need each other. And he learned from us how we were crossing it, but he had a perspective that we didn't have to help us to get out of it, and we were all better for it.
Yeah. And I remember that moment because we were able to get across, and we had a little conversation with him, and we kind of stopped where he was at above that drop off, or that wall coming out of the river. And it's just not all focused when we're going through those canyons, because when you get to the other side and you get a chance to actually take a breather, you look up, and every one of these canyons at the top of it is Mount Hood, and it's spectacular. I don't know if I've been on a more beautiful trail run ever than that. I mean, consistently coming around the corners and whoa, there's Mount Hood right in front of you. And not just Mount Hood, but just everything. We ran through all kinds of environments in 42 miles.
Yeah, and you look up, you see the mountain, and there's, especially when we're at the bottom of a canyon, the water, there's almost certainly going to be a waterfall or two or three. So you've got Mount Hood with a waterfall in front of it pouring into this river that we're in.
And if you've so for people that have been to Colorado, you drive to a trailhead and it's 9,000 feet, 10,000 feet high, and you're going to hike up to a 14er. So you're getting a perspective of a range of mountains and the one you're going to climb. But here we started out from our cabin at 1,500 feet, and we drove, and Mount Hood is 11,273 feet. So Mount Hood is actually 10,000 feet above where we were staying for the night. And that's just a whole different perspective if you've never been out to the Cascades. I mean, Colorado isn't like that. The massive prominence of those mountains are completely different. That's what just shook me the first time. I was like, wow, that's huge.
Yeah. So we've talked about sand. We've talked about rivers. What other surfaces, how would you describe what we got to run just physically, either on top of or in? What was the environment like?
Oh, boy. I mean, there were some sections that were, to me, were like quintessential Washington, Oregon trail running. Was crushed pine needles, huge cedar trees, shade, the lights kind of in and out of that area, and either smooth or maybe downhill, and you're running on that, and they talk about kind of buttery like trails. That was it, and you're running that, you're thinking, man, I could fly down this, but then you come back to reality and realize it's mile 28. I'm not flying down this.
Yeah. There's moss on the trees. Yeah. So we've got the very, what you'd expect from the Northwest, pine needles, cedars, moss. And then there's other spots where it was rocky. Like, I don't know how to describe running on rocks that some of it's kind of gravel, like you'd expect on a gravel driveway, but others are like softball size boulders of different dimensions, but surfaces. And so that's probably my least favorite is the baseball to softball to watermelon size rocks that you don't know if it's going to be stable. You don't know if it's going to twist on you, but you can't really run it. But even walking it feels slow.
Yeah.
That's probably my least favorite.
Yeah. It was interesting because there were times when you didn't have to pay a huge amount of attention to the trail below you when you're running, because it was either just crushed pine needles or flat with no roots or no rocks. And that was awesome. And there's times when you had to actually have constant focus on where your next foot plant was at. And for me, just running, example would be Superior 100, that race the whole time you need to be looking down because of roots and rocks and gnarly stuff. And you just never really have much of a chance to look up. But here, this was awesome. There was sections where, whoa, you get to look up and feel like you don't need to worry too much about tripping. And then there's other times where you got to be intensely focused.
Yeah, I think my neck was the first thing I felt yesterday. I mean, there were times where I felt my legs, obviously, and talk about maybe blisters on our feet and other sore things. But I think my neck was the first spot where I realized I don't look down a whole lot in my normal life.
Right.
I guess when I'm trail running, I do. But I mean, like right now, we're looking at each other, and most of our jobs we're looking out. And so just to spend hours at a time looking pretty intently down, because it doesn't take much to bring somebody down. Because, if somebody's listening today or watching and you're maybe not a runner and you think about running, you might think about like the gait or this stride where they're getting their legs up and almost like a hurdler. But endurance running is a lot more shuffling.
Yeah.
And as the day goes on, your foot gets less and less off the ground. I don't know how you say that, but for me anyway, it does. It becomes just the least amount of effort to keep it going. So at that point, if there's a quarter on the ground, you can trip on that. Like that becomes insurmountable at some point.
Well, and ultra runners, I think a lot of them get in their head at some point. They haven't tripped all day. They feel pretty good, but there's always that voice like, you got be cautious, but you're looking pretty good. You don't, and it's usually around that time period where you end up tripping. And so for me, it was We were coming down easy downhill, crushed pine needles.
It's the best trail we had all day.
Oh, just beautiful. And we were moving. I was looking at my watch. We were 10-minute miles. Which is at that stage of the run.
This is about mile 28, 29 into our day.
Which is pretty decent. And coming around the corner, I'm feeling pretty good. Probably a little bit cocky. See two guys on the trail. Hey, how you doing? Hey, we're running. Hey, and then, you kind of look at them. And you're not paying attention, and boom, I went down pretty hard. And the look on their faces was priceless. The older guy said, "Was that fall number 1, 2, or 3 for today?" And I said, "Well, unfortunately, that was number 1. I was hoping not to have a fall." But they helped me up and we got back going. But
yeah, I was a little bit ahead of you at the time, and I kind of hear something, and then I hear like, "You okay?" I'm like, "Oh boy, that's my guy back there."
The end was halted because Reddel got a concussion at mile 28.
Oh, he didn't get a concussion for good. So we had a lot of tree shade and cover, not too much exposed in the sun.
Yeah. And that was huge because I kept dipping my hat into every water crossing we had because I tend to overheat in some of these races. And if it gets above 70, 75 and the sun's just glaring at you, I've had not great experiences with races like that. So, but mostly, except for some exposed areas, mostly, especially on the west side, was pretty shady almost the whole way back.
Yeah. Oh, how about let's talk about food and drink for a little bit, give people a sense of, so what are you actually eating and drinking when you're out there? So for Dave and I, 42-ish miles, it took us about 15 and a half hours. So we started at 5 in the morning, 5:10, and finished at 8:30 in the evening. We had this kind of event you have to plan. But somebody's listening like, I should do this. You should plan, and you should talk to people who've done this before. Yeah. This is not me and Dave and I's first time. And when it was our first time, we talked to a lot of people who've done this before. Yeah. So if somebody's listening and maybe it's just pure masochistic curiosity, what do you eat? What did you eat and drink, and what did you plan to eat and drink? How'd that go?
Yeah. My food bucket tends to look very non-healthy, but it's a race, and the key for me is just getting calories in. At the end of the day, would it be great if they were healthy? Yeah, but you know what? At this point, no, because I'm eventually burning a lot of fat just because of at the time of the race and the speed we're going. But
yeah, salt and fat and sugar. That's what your body.
And so there's 3 things that I love, which I don't know if there's other ultra runners share that, but one is oatmeal cream pies. So oatmeal cream pies, generally in the larger size, so that it's 300 to 400 calories just for that one beautiful cookie with marshmallow in it, and you just smush it, and boom, it goes down quick. So that was good. And then the other things I had were candy, like orange slices, like fruit slices. Love those things. And I had a little bit of applesauce stuff and some trail mix. So I try to mix it up. I don't usually use a whole lot of goos or things like that. I've just not had great experiences with that. But we do have a timetable. Times tables are different, but it may be after every 30 minutes you're grabbing some calories out of your pack to eat on the run, and especially for hydration, you're kind of drinking, hopefully starting early, more than you probably think you need, and eating more than what you probably think you need. So it was just the kind of that rhythm throughout the day. And there's times when I just was not paying attention, was missing, and you try to catch up, and hopefully you weren't too far behind on the nutrition.
Any sense of how much you drank during the day?
I might be a little unusual because in races I tend to not drink near as much as other people, but I would say, and I had 2 flasks up front, 500, 700 milliliters each. I don't know, probably that times 6, that times 8. So not a huge amount. I'm not just, for 42 miles, I'm not just sloshing down like 15 gallon or 15 liters of water.
Yeah. I never felt sloshed. I never felt like that. I think sometimes when your stomach stops processing things well, then all of a sudden things are sitting and not getting in you well. I never had that experience of either heavy with food or heavy with water, which, again, if you've done endurance events, you immediately identify with that. Oh, I know what it's like when my stomach's full, but I'm hungry or thirsty because you're out of balance. But I think I probably got 7 to 8 liters. So that's roughly 2 gallons maybe.
Yeah, that's good. I use a little bit of electrolyte mix in some of the water. One is just purely water. The other one is electrolyte mix, and that helps me a little bit. But there's times though during later part of the race where the mix doesn't taste good anymore, and so you're fully relying upon water, which is okay because you're moving that slower at that point too. You're really not needing to keep in as many calories at that point because you've already done that, and now your body is just simply burning more fat at a slower pace because you're moving slower.
Yeah. My nutrition tends to be this pendulum of whatever tasted great on my last event, I'm like, oh, I'm going to have a lot of that. And then by the end of the next one, I hate it and I never want to see it again. And so for this particular adventure, I had tons of, it was Gatorade, the gel, and then Goo brand, these little waffle thingies that were just sugar and I don't know what they were. And that's almost all I had. A little bit of trail mix, a little bit of Ritz crackers, couple apple sauces, and that was awesome. But in previous runs, I think, if I go back 2 events, I had the same thing. And even right now, like the idea of having one of those waffles or gels, like I couldn't eat one of those in the next 6 months. I hate the idea of it. Yeah. So for my next run, when I'm going shopping, that won't be a predominant part of my thing. And next time I have one of these events, it might just be Ritz crackers and Oreos and Pringles, and that's awesome.
And that's cool. I mean, those are the learnings you get every race you do. And I had a learning from this race is because what we were using wasn't just pure applesauce. It was a pouch of applesauce, but it was also mixed with like carrots and spinach and other vegetable stuff. And I had a little hesitation because I said to Dan, does this taste more like applesauce or does this taste more like vegetable stuff? Because if it's vegetable stuff, it's not going to go well for me.
This is not going to go well.
So I had to taste one of them at first, and it was like, oh, that was really pretty good. Okay, so that was a really good thing to learn because I'll probably use some of that going forward in a race. Kind of like I don't know if we talked about it, but much like Hitchcock that ran in December, I got in the aid station. There was Jell-O. Shots.
I think we mentioned that here on the show last time. Yeah,
that was a learning for me. It was like
the non-alcoholic Jell-O shots
was phenomenal. So there's always those little learnings you get every race because every race is different. Your experiences and your response to that is all different. So it's a constant learning process. I mean, you're a constant learner.
Yeah. So our thinking about the day yesterday, about a third. It was more or less divided into 3 sections. So we started at the lodge, and then we met Charlotte a third of the way in, 13, 14 miles. How were you feeling at that first aid station, so to speak?
I was feeling pretty good. We had gone through the sand, some beautiful forest through the ski lifts area, and then we came out of that into some really exposed area and got probably to one of the highest parts of our hike, of our run, which was probably, I don't know, close to 8,000 feet. And so the mountain is 11,273. So we're up there fairly high and completely exposed, no trees, but it was just beautiful. Yeah. And you're coming down off of that into the aid station. But I was feeling really good at that point. And just thankful too, because at that point you've got this unencumbered view of Hood for miles, and it's just there. And it just never goes away, and you're just constantly looking back at it and just marveled at what we're doing.
Yeah, similarly, I think when we met Charlotte there, refilled supplies, I felt pretty invincible. I was like, all right, we're not crushing it, we're not running 8-minute miles, but I'm like, this is doable, this is sustainable. We got there 4.5 hours maybe, and it's like, all right, we're 4:15. Like this is everything is going to plan, I would say.
And we knew that we were running in a unhurried state. We weren't trying to meet a goal. Yeah. We actually were talking to people on the trail and stopping and taking pictures and video. And we talked about that beforehand. I said, just so you know, I'm going to be doing some video stuff. So this might slow it down a little bit. But for me, that's the beauty of an experience like that, is that it's not like we're just foregone the whole race kind of situation,
right?
Because we're still running hard and we still have goals out there, but at the same time, we're really in the moment and wanting to enjoy all of that.
Yeah, so we're stopping to talk to people, either asking questions or answering questions, or just visiting. So we're taking pictures, we're having fun, and then, like you said, it's not a race. In my head, two of the things that were kind of over my head the whole time was, I don't want to be in the dark out here,
right,
and I would really love to get pizza before it closes. So
those are two huge post-race goals.
From like 6:30 in the morning. That's in my head. I'm like, all right, let's enjoy this, but also I really don't want to be out here in the dark. And around Mount Hood, it's not a big city. There aren't a lot of services and restaurants, and so there were 2 restaurants open till 8, one open till 9, and one open till 10. So as the clock is going, it's like, okay, so we're not getting Mexican. Got it. Okay, so we're not getting burgers. Okay. Hopefully we can get pizza.
And we're commiserating about that on the trail for the last couple of miles, trying to figure out, okay, here's what we need to do when we get in. We need to have Charlotte call in for some pizza, because we can get that ahead of time. And then do we eat it there? Well, I don't know. Do we take it home and get a shower? I don't know. We'll work on that. So then what happens?
So that's in our mind. Yeah. So we'll get to Charlotte saving the day in the end here. But so first third, I feel not invincible, but we're on pace for getting food. We're on pace for not being in the jungle and the wilderness at night, but we're also enjoying the day. How about that second third? How'd you feel over the top?
The second third was interesting, because the first mile that we came out of Cloud Cap, there was nobody on the trail, because nobody was going that direction. All these people that had come up to that trailhead were going where we had just come from, because it's easy and beautiful and all that. The first mile out of Cloud Cap was a drop into this canyon. There's nobody there, and that was a tough river cross right there. Yeah. And then climbing up out of that was brutal, because I think that was probably 30, 40, 50 feet of just loose rock and scree with no trail, and your hand, foot, all the way to get out of that thing.
Yeah, so 30 to 40 feet at a very steep grade where it's just kind of a sand wall with some rocks, and you're on your hands and knees, literally hands and knees, climbing up this thing, and you might pull a rock and it might just fall. And so you're kind of trying to safely get up, but also trying to be aware of who's beneath you.
Yeah.
And so you don't want to hurt them with a rock, but also just courtesy. You don't want to shower them in sand and gravel, which I did at one point to this nice guy. He was very gracious about it. I feel like he ducked underneath me, but I don't know if that's actually how it happened, but that's what it felt like in the moment. And I talked to his wife or girlfriend. She seemed pretty gracious about it. Yeah. But that was the hardest mental, like how do we get out of this?
Yeah. Then once you get out of that, you're kind of repeating that, because we were going through a whole bunch, another climb, and then down in River Valley, and then another climb, and so you're doing that and knowing that we still have probably 7 miles yet to get to Top Spur. But
Top Spur is our second aid station where we're going to meet Charlotte for aid and refreshments.
And we roll into that, and I was a little bit. I was definitely more tired at that point, and hot, and the bugs were starting to swarm a little bit.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay. And in my mind, I was like, okay, we just completed 2/3 of it, but I know what's on the back end. So let's take a little break.
Yeah. So we've completed. So we get to the second aid station, which is just the second trailhead. It's called Top Spur. It's in the northwest of Mount Hood. We're meeting Charlotte there. And then from there, we've done 2/3. It's just a third to go. And the first part of that final third is nice and downhill. It's that beautiful trail where Dave fell. Yeah. And so this is great. So we come out of the woods, and there's a group of people standing there. Several trails can join together. The Pacific Crest Trail, Timberline Trail, there's just several trails all together. And this group of people's all talking, and they leave. And some guy's standing there, and he goes, "Hey, wait, whose bag is this over here?" And Dave and I pop out of the woods. And we're like, "I think that's mine." And he's like, "You literally just got here. You look terrible. There's no way this is yours." Yeah. And it was Charlotte. She set it there for us. And she's like, "Oh, she was thinking at the time, I'm going to go meet Dan and Dave earlier at the trail junction, walk with them, give them some water, be really helpful. She didn't know that Dave and I missed a turn and took a slight detour, which was really the official way, but there's been some trail damage in the last few years, so there was a reroute, but they no longer are marking the reroute. So we missed that. So Charlotte's waiting for us at one junction. We come behind a mile or two from a different way, so she doesn't see us. So we pillage the bag. We get all the stuff. I see some guy going where I assume Charlotte is, and I say, hey, if you see a gal my build by herself, her name is Charlotte, we tell her Dan is here. And she never met that guy. So I send a little message with my satellite communicator at the bag. We waited a few minutes. We're leaving. We'll see you later. So she comes back to her ransacked bag with just like food and water bottle wrapper, like empty water bottles, food wrappers, just all around the ground. She's like, is it chipmunks or is this Dan? It's hard to tell.
No, it's typical ultra runners throwing their stuff away at mile 25 because
it was close.
They're too lazy to take care of it.
We didn't like take it down the trail with us or anything. It was right there. But so that was a little bit unnerving where we refilled our supplies. Charlotte left her bag there, thankfully. And then we head off going, well, I'm sure she's fine. And, a couple months later, I'm pretty sure she's fine. I mean, what? But we realized, whether she was taking a nap or going to the bathroom or going for a walk, we couldn't just go find her in the wilderness.
Yeah. And the young guy at the trail that had the dog was waiting for 3 of his friends that were on the trail and started to learn more about that story. And he had noted that, well, what time did you guys start? Well, about 5. And he said, oh, my friends started at 7. So they started 2 hours after. And he'd already expected them to be well ahead of us. So we started talking to him like, oh, we think we're doing pretty well. We're moving pretty well.
We're doing 20-minute miles, including stops and river crossings and refilling. I don't want to brag, but we're doing 20 minutes out here.
Yeah, that's pretty good. And then we get he's like, well, yeah, but I think my friends were crushing about 10-minute miles. Like, okay, yeah.
That's different. That's different.
So then eventually they come rolling in, and it's 3 young, clearly well conditioned dudes coming in and just having a blast, just laughing. And
exactly. Not only are they crushing the time, but they're having fun. They're smiling. They're laughing.
Yeah.
We'd smiled for part of it.
Yeah. So we had a little conversation with them, and then we took off. And back in my mind, I was like, okay, at what point of this trail right here are they going to come flying by us? And one of them eventually did. I don't know if they ever made it, but
yeah, we didn't see the other 2 for a while, if ever. So we're down to the final third now. The first third, picture perfect, couldn't have gone better. Second third, a couple hairy river crossings, a little bushwhacking through the jungle, but pretty beautiful, a lot of wildflowers. We refill without Charlotte, but she's, by the way, fine. Spoiler alert, everything's all right. And then we start our final third of the day. And first maybe 2 miles of that are on the Pacific Crest Trail, which goes from Mexico up to Canada. So there are some real smelly people out there. Some of these people have been on the trail for weeks and months, like literally for months at a time. If you want to get a visual picture, a giant hiking backpack on an old-time prospector, that's what a couple of them look like. You smell them before you see them. So they were delightful people.
And we asked one of them, where were you coming from? Just trying to get a gauge of how far we're from someplace. And this young guy said, I don't remember. I don't really care. Have a good day.
Yeah, you could get, some people were like, I want to talk to other people. I'm like, hey, where are you coming from? I don't even know, man. Like, all right. Have a good day.
Stay on the trail. Somebody can help you at some point.
Dude. So we've got a couple miles maybe of just beautiful trail. And then we get to one of the visual highlights besides the other 40 visual highlights, but Ramona Falls, kind of on the western, a little bit south side of Mount Hood, is just a beautiful rock face. I don't know, how would you describe Ramona Falls?
Yeah, I'd seen it on video before, but in person, it just blew me away. So it's this huge rock wall that has, it's a very bumpy kind of rock wall and kind of layered out, but you'll see streams of water, 15, 20, 30 streams that are all flowing down tumbling down at the same time. It's almost like a picture you'd see, like a slow motion photo of a waterfall. But this thing was huge. It was, I'm going to say 80 to 100 feet high, and then probably easily, if not more than that, across. And it was just beautiful. The sound of it just coming down, and there was a pretty decent force of water coming down, but it was amazing.
It's kind of equal parts water and rock when you look at it. So like if you picture a waterfall where it's all water, or you can picture like a stream coming down a wall that's all rock. This was sort of like Plinko style, like random, how it flowed down, but equal parts water, rock, really unique.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
So that so we get there. I'm texting Charlotte confirming that she's okay. She's okay. We can't find the trail, this is not the first or the last time of the day that it happened. We try one direction, that's not it. We ask somebody else, that's not it, and we eventually find it. And so I very distinctly remember looking at my watch, going mile 31. So it's 42 miles is the loop, mile 31. So we've got 11-ish to go, and 31 miles is also 50 kilometers. So 50K is sort of one of the standard thresholds of like, this is an ultra marathon.
Yeah.
So we did it. 31 miles, ultra marathon, 50K. All we got to do is bring it home and go to the lodge.
That's right. And we knew what was ahead of us. Because I just recall having looked at the elevation map beforehand, and whether it was, I don't know, whether I blocked it out or not, but I saw this climb, 2,000 foot climb. I don't know, it was in 3 or 4 or 5 miles, whatever. And I was like, okay, that's going to be pretty difficult. But I didn't really see the rest of that, which was a little bit downhill and then another, I don't know, 500 to 800 foot climb. And so that was the climb out of Ramona Falls that was hard. It wasn't like a super steep trail, but it gave you no indication that it was going to end. And you just had to put your head down and get after it. That's where your mental fortitude and your spiritual toughness kicks in, because at this point your body is super tired anyway. I mean, you're not going to start running up that unless you're a complete idiot, because then you're going to burn out in about half mile. But so we did that. We just pushed onward, and at some point I also knew, because we were from top spur to the end, what is that, 20?
15, 17, somewhere in there.
Okay,
miles.
15, 17, and with no additional chance at water unless we filtered it. So as we were going up there, I was thinking, at some point we're going to need to filter some water, because I'm not going to have enough. Yeah. And we did that.
Yeah. So we're leaving Ramona Falls. I looked at my watch. It's like 31 miles, 50K. And there were these random people who were setting up camping there, a couple gals, I think. And they were like, woohoo, way to go. And I was like, yeah, this is fun. This feels good. Yeah. And that was the last fun we had until we were done. That was it. So I don't know how many hours you think we had from Ramona to the finish. It felt like 6 to 8, but maybe it wasn't that long.
Yeah, I don't think it was that long, but there were the miles, and I went back and looked at the breakdown per mile. It wasn't as bad as we thought. We were still probably moving at 26-minute mile pace, which is not fast. But at the end of the race, it wasn't like a 40-minute mile. I mean, we were still moving, but it was just a very monotonous trudging, knowing what you had to do, because stopping wasn't going to help you at that point.
Yeah, catching your breath. That wasn't the problem. You were just
had
empty.
to kind of stay in the moment and get after it. And then we got to a point where I was like, I probably think, we talked about it, I probably think I need some more water. So we're going to stop. And then these two people from Colorado, great couple, a 68-year-old guy and his wife, 64, and she's sitting in the creek with her feet in the creek. And
that's where we're filtering our water to drink from, by the way. It's fine.
But we filtered downstream.
Yeah, we got it. Everything's fine.
But it was great to just have a little bit of time with them, just to hang out and talk and get to know them a little bit. I mean, he said he had done the PCT and had run Leadville 100, so there was a connection there to talk about ultras, and they were just really enjoyable. And at the end of the day, they gave me some additional of their water, so it was great. And that was like, okay, I'm good now, because I know we can get to the end.
Yeah, you mentioned a second ago, just keep your head down. For me, I remember they're quite literally having that conscious thought, because if you've ever done hiking and there's switchbacks, which is one standard way to navigate steep inclines, that's great. But sometimes the switchbacks, I think, add variety.
Yeah.
But we had quite a few moments where there were no switchbacks. It was just up, and
Right.
you couldn't even see the turn, the bend, and I'd look up to kind of get a sense of where we were, and then we'd hike a little bit, and I'd look up, and it didn't look any different.
Right.
And we'd hike a little bit more, and look up. I'm like,
Where's the ridge at? Are we at the top of the ridge?
Yeah, we are not making any progress, and so just that conscious. I can't control where the top is. I can't control how soon it gets there. I don't know. I don't really have a good way of finding out. I just need to keep taking the next step. And so very consciously, I'm just like, and even like Dave is a power hiker extraordinaire. So Dave's just charging. I'm like, I can't control his pace. I am just looking at my feet. I'm not tripping on rocks. I'm climbing over another downed tree, and I'm going to moan and gripe and whine about it. And that's what I need to do right now. So I come across some tree, and it's like, I'm trying to step my leg, and not even step, like I'm manually like lifting my leg up onto this tree, and I rolled on a couple of them where I just kind of bear hugged it and just like peel off the other way. But that looking down was saying, I just need to do the task at hand, and I can't think about 5 minutes from now. Just left, right, left, right, left, right. Like literally just I'm willing each step. And eventually these steps will get me there wherever there is and however far, like, is it 3 miles or 7 miles? I mean, there were moments that I didn't feel like I had a good sense.
Right. But when we would get to that, like the last kind of opening that we come out on, and you could see Mount Hood, and the sun was starting to set down on and casting kind of those glow shadows on the mountain. But you could tell at that point that the trail was going to level out. The trail was going to be a little bit rolling now, and you could see in the distance one of the ski lift chairs, and even like a little tower in the distance, and you knew, all right, there it is, renewed energy. Let's go get that.
Yeah, and so as Dave mentioned earlier, at this point, we got our eyes on the prize. We know the end is near. We're looking at our watch. Well, my watch died, so I'm kind of like speculating. I know the sun goes down at 8:30, so we're getting close there. Pizza's open till 10. It's about a 40-minute drive. Okay, if we get right in the car and we call on the way, hopefully they'll take orders. And we get near the lodge, and we hear Charlotte hooping and hollering at us because she's awesome. And she's got her phone up. She's recording like the final finish, and I don't care like about the footage. I'm like, we need to order pizza, and she's like trying to capture us. Like, here comes Dan and Dave into the sun red. I'm like, but we're hungry. We need to call and see if they're still open. So like her cinematic debut of trying to capture this graceful moment. It's just me shouting in the background. She's like, I ordered her the pizza. I'm like, no, but we have to order pizza. She's like, I already ordered the pizza. There's pizza? She's like, yes, there's pizza.
We were like,
So like, that's Charlotte's like video of our run. Was me saying like, you sure there's pizza? She's like, yes, I got the pizza. But there's pizza, right? There's pizza in the car. So
we got the pizza, and now the next decision was, do we drive all the way back to the cabin to eat it there and take a shower, or do we eat it right now? And Dad graciously gave me that opportunity to respond to that, and I thought for probably about a second, and then I said, no, we're going to eat that right now. Yeah, we are. But the lodge wasn't open. There was a wedding at the main lodge, and then they
didn't want us as part of their wedding party.
No part of us. So the other part, the day use kind of was closed, but there's the check-in hut area was still open. They had a bench, so we walked in that area, and you got 2 pizza boxes, and you open that up, and I'm telling you, I mean, if you're an ultra runner, you know this. That's probably the closest slice of heaven that you can get. You're just mowing down on pizza after a run like that.
So we're exhausted. Our bodies have been working hard, so they kind of stop working, which for me always means I get cold. I don't know. And temperature at that time was, I don't know, maybe getting upper 60s. It was dropping pretty quick.
Yeah.
And we were basically eating, if you can picture like a bus stop. I mean, like a bench with just a covering over it. So we're just outside, basically in a bus stop, covered in dirt and filth, and as gross as you can be, starting to shiver, eating pizza that had been in the back of the car for probably an hour, and it was the best.
And nobody's talking because I don't have any energy for that.
Yeah.
I got to focus on this piece of pizza right here.
Yeah, it was like my only talking was like, Charlotte, can I have water? It's right there. She's like, it's right next to you. And I was like, can you open the water for me? Like I couldn't open it was too tight. I was like, can you open it for me?
Yeah. That was a great time. And at that end, you knew, wow, you didn't really process it, but you knew we're done. We did it before the sun went down, which is what we wanted to do. But at the same time, we also had a lot of fun on the trail and took our time and got to meet people and have conversations and just really enjoy the day. Because there are people like hikers that don't necessarily like ultra runners, because the hikers, well, you didn't get a chance to enjoy the whole day. I mean, we hiked that whole thing in 4 days. You guys did it in a day. You know, some people think that you don't really get to experience it. It's a different experience.
I think we took it in.
But we took it in.
So anything you learned or laughed about? And you could do either, both, neither.
The applesauce was a big learning, especially the apple veggie mix applesauce.
Not as scary as it sounds.
No, and it was actually, okay, there's some good stuff in the whole vegetable side of that thing. I'm good with that.
Kirkland was the brand, by the way.
Kirkland,
Costco.
yeah. So definitely have that at home. I have to check that out. Laughing, always a laugh at water crossings, because I'm just laughing about, okay, if I take a biff here, it's going to be pretty interesting. I might float for a while and Dan will have to kind of, go downstream to pick me up. But those are always fun, and not laughing at people, but just kind of laughing at
you smile?
Scenarios that make you smile. Just people you see on the trails, from, like you mentioned, the prospector with, we saw several of those people that looked like they had been out there for 15 years.
15 years.
Seriously. Their beard was down to here, and it was okay. And then you would see what I would call like the typical kind of Northwest person, woman, man, got all the gear on, just flannel shirt and just everything the Patagonia had, and just all the gear, and you don't know their story, but it's like, yeah, that's what I see on the pictures, but then you have a variety of people, and it's just fun to we're people that, as we're coming down the trail, we're saying hi, how's your morning, hey, thanks, or moving out of the way, they're moving out, we're saying thanks, and not everybody does that.
Yeah,
and very few people are actually interacting with each other in trail, and so that was a great, not a learning, because we do that all the time, but that was a pleasurable time. Is that an intentional time of just interacting with people?
Yeah, I think a couple things that made me laugh that weren't, again, not laughing at people. It's just, especially in the moment of fatigue, there was near the end, we're a mile from the lodge. It's 8 o'clock. The sun is setting, and there's campgrounds everywhere. There's people setting up tents, and there's this one little campsite where there's, I think, 3 people, and they're just looking off into the sunset over all the hills and the valley, and it's just beautiful. And one of the 3 people has a full mosquito net over their head. and I don't know why it struck me. I guess if all 3 of them did, it would have looked different, but 2 of them are just sort of in nature, and one is in their little self-created bubble. I'm not getting bit by mosquitoes. Yeah, but you look weird. And,
you see that kind of silhouette profile, and you're like, what's wrong with that picture? Yeah. There's something a little bit unusual with that picture.
So that was one. And then the other one that was not funny in the moment, but it makes me smile, so I'm going to share it anyways. One of the Pacific Crest Trail, these Mexico to Canada. Some people do the whole thing, some people do parts of it, but somebody who was going out for a long hike, he was on his phone, probably looking at a map or something like that, and he didn't see me coming. And we were right, because Dave and I weren't going all that fast, but we were right on top of him. He's like, whoa, he was startled to see me. And then he kept going, and I said to his wife behind him, I go, well, it's a good thing I wasn't a bear. And she didn't laugh at all.
No.
But I told that to Charlotte, and Charlotte gave me a big laugh. And I was like, I knew it was kind of funny.
Yeah, confirmation.
Charlotte's got a pretty low threshold, but I was like, oh, that was pretty funny. Yeah. They didn't appreciate it, but I knew it was funny.
Yeah. And that's a point. Just a lot of people, don't take yourself too seriously. A lot of people probably were taking themselves a little bit too seriously on the trail. Like, sure, it's a hike, it's a run. Why not have a little conversation with somebody?
Yeah. And I think one there are probably a number of learnings. I talked about keeping my head down, which is quite literal, but I think there's something metaphorical. I just sort of do the task at hand. I can't control outcomes. I can just manage this moment. And the other thing I was aware of was as it related to food. And most of the food went down pretty easily. But I wasn't always hungry, but I knew I needed to eat.
Yeah.
And I know when you're doing this sort of thing, you need to balance, like, listen to your body. But there's other times where I don't think you should listen to your body. Like, you might not think you're hungry. Too bad. Like, do what you need to do, whether you feel like it or not. Same thing with like, I might not be thirsty, but if it's been 20 minutes, I need to drink.
Yeah.
And so that felt sort of like a larger lesson yesterday of there are plenty of times in life where I don't feel like doing something.
Right.
But if that's what I need to be doing, it doesn't really matter how I feel about it. Like, do the right thing, whether it's a moral choice or a chore or just, I don't know, maybe I don't feel like going to church. Yeah. Most people don't, but maybe you should.
Yeah.
Or whatever it is. I don't feel like praying, or I don't feel like playing with my kids, or I don't feel like whatever it is. Who says you need to feel like doing the right thing?
Right.
So I thought about that a lot yesterday, especially as I was eating and drinking. I'm like, I don't really want to eat, but I know I need to be on top of this.
Yeah, and that's true. And I love that spiritual connection to that. One thing at our company is some of the company values that we have is one of those top 3 company values we have is do the right thing no matter what. And that's been impressed upon people that, if you're going to be part of, and we're part of a Berkshire Hathaway conglomerate, we're one of the little specks in his portfolio, but he expects his companies to do the right thing no matter what, because at the end of the day, the last thing he wants is to open up a newspaper and read about something that we didn't do right, that we didn't take ethically the right course. And so from an ethical standpoint, or more importantly, from a spiritual standpoint, keep your head down, keep your head up, but just keep moving forward and pressing into God to give you those answers.
So yeah, that was one of my takeaways. Or even just eating vegetables. Like, I don't want to eat this. Yeah. Who cares? Do it. Nobody says you have to want to.
Yep.
So just do it. Slept great last night. Had cold pizza for breakfast this morning. Was amazing.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And
even though it wasn't an official ultra race, we exchanged awards. So typically in the ultra runner world, it has to be 100K or more to get a belt buckle. And most race directors are pretty stringent about that, and I get that. But this wasn't a race. This is our experience, so we get to set the rules. So
I am the race director.
It was always fun. So for rim to rim to rim in the Grand Canyon last year, I went out to Etsy and looked for belt buckles that were from the Grand Canyon, and you see a bunch of weird stuff, but then you see a couple are like, oh, that's kind of cool. So I got those from a couple of guys last year. So I did the same thing for Mount Hood this year. So I ended up getting a couple belt buckles, and that was kind of the belt buckle finish award.
That was a nice surprise.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll sport that sometime soon.
And Dan also gave me a
coaster with outline of Mount Hood,
which is really cool.
So just something to we have some 2414 coasters here if you ever want to get on the show, or get a keychain or a sticker if somebody's willing to join me and Shane typically. Shane, by the way, is alive and well. We just gave him some time off. He puts in a lot of hours around here, so he's at home right now mourning the Brewers' recent loss. I forgot what team they were playing, but I think the Brewers lost. So that's where Shane's at right now. Dave's got a flight to catch in like 12 hours back to Omaha. Dave, this has been awesome.
Yeah, it's
awesome
been fantastic.
Week, and thanks for joining me for this.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's kind of random.
Yeah, random, but somewhat kind of normal and regular, because we've shared experiences before, whether it's Psycho Waiko, whether it's Peak Challenge, or whether it's the Pigtail Challenge that was out here a couple of years ago. I mean, just kind of not on a regular basis, but just on when the opportunity is right and it feels right, we do adventures together, and it's a blast.
Yeah. Dave, if somebody wanted to find some of your creative storytelling work, how could they see how you're helping other people tell their stories?
Yeah. So I have a YouTube channel called, it's Nebraska Ultra Runner is the name of
Nebraska,
the channel.
not the, just the
Nebraska
Ultra Runner.
And I've done videos, documentaries of Western states and other people running races, but I've also done stuff of local runners and myself, but mostly other people, because I want to help tell people's stories. And I'm doing a regular dirt series right now for just normal trail runners. A lot of, and it's well deserved, but a lot of attention goes to the elite runners. And if you're Googling ultra running, and you're seeing a lot of videos put together of ultras and those top athletes, but this is more about your normal, for me, normal local kind of athlete who's out on the trails, who might be middle packer or back of the packer, but is putting in the work, and it just not a focus on their running, but really more of a focus on, let's hear something unique and positive about your life that can be shared on the trail. So if somebody sees a video and they go, oh yeah, I remember Mike Soltis, his mac and cheese extraordinaire recipes. People are going to want, hey, you were on that video. I want some of your recipes. So just that kind of thing. I just do it for fun. I've always done video stuff for churches that I've been involved with. And for me now, it's just a personal passion just to tell other people's stories.
Yeah, I love it. So sharing stories, celebrating the ordinary. And I fully acknowledge that a 42-mile run is not ordinary for many people. But what Dave and I are trying to do today is just share our story a little bit. And in some ways, it's very ordinary in that neither one of us are professional athletes. We're just normal people with spouses and children and jobs, and we have something we care about and are passionate about. And I hope it's interesting to listen to, but I know for me, I love hearing about other people's passions, interests that aren't my own at all.
Right.
I'm like, that's cool. Tell me more. So we got to share a little bit of our story today.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Cool. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. We'll take a break from ultra marathoning for a while. So this just the two, in case you thought this is gonna be a normal, regular thing. Now, is this a running podcast? No, it's just normal people on the journey together, sharing life and celebrating kind of God's faithfulness and seeing kind of how things unfold. So thanks for listening, and we'll catch you all later.
That's the end of the episode, but we want to continue the conversation. Continue the conversation by sharing this episode, subscribing, or leaving a review. Connect with us on Instagram at 2414podcast. Connect with us through email at 2414@stlukes-church.com. Or best of all, keep the conversation going by inviting someone to process with you, so that you can each walk away with more understanding that leads to more conversation as the journey continues. If you happen to be in the Seattle-Tacoma area of Washington, stop by on a Sunday morning and say hi. 2414 is a podcast produced by St. Luke's Lutheran Church in Federal Way, Washington. To find more content, discover upcoming opportunities to connect in person, or to support the show, head on over to stlukes-church.com. Thanks for walking with us.